Good morning, everyone. Let's take up a few questions today. The first one is, why is it that one keeps succumbing to old habits and thought patterns? It seems like even if once they have been surpassed through grace, they show up again out of the blue. This leads to quite a guilt trip, as if all the teachings and the glimpse of peace went missing at the testing times. This question is the experience of many people on this journey, and it is quite natural. It also shows the earnestness in the quest for peace. Now, if we look at it line by line, why is it that one keeps succumbing to old habits and thought patterns? You see, that is the burden of the conditioning. For years and years, maybe decades, we have received this bombardment of conditioning from all sides. Conditioning at home, in our social environment, in our locality, economic environment, through the religion, and so on. So when a teaching comes in and the understanding of that gives a glimpse of peace, it may not transform your life overnight. It is a gradual process, because now this is new conditioning. So it takes time. This is also what Ramesh ji would refer to as the flip-flop. Sometimes flip, sometimes flop. So it is a natural process. This succumbing to the old habits and thought patterns will happen. After all, you've been carrying that since childhood, if not earlier than that. The next line is, it seems like even if once they have been surpassed through grace, they show up again out of the blue. Precisely. Firstly, they have been surpassed through grace is very well said. Through not my doing. Grace of a higher power. Now, if this is already understood, then it is so easy to see that it is the me which wants to speed up this process and does not want the old habits and patterns to emerge. The acknowledgement is already there. It seems like even if once they have been surpassed through grace, they show up again out of the blue. So, this is very important to understand, that it is the grace that brought the peace, but it is the me which wants to now hasten the process and does not like it if the old habits and thought patterns continue. This leads to quite a guilt trip. Now, this guilt trip can only happen if one feels one is not doing something. Oh, I am not doing enough to ensure that now there is peace all the time and that old habits and thought patterns do not return. But you yourself have said that even if once they have been surpassed through grace, so guilt trip means doership. I did not do something, therefore I feel guilty about it. You see, there is no room for guilt in this understanding, because you did not do it. It is the teaching and the new conditioning that the teaching has brought that has given you the gift of a glimpse of peace. So do allow the teaching to do its job. So this last point about this leads to quite a guilt trip, as if all the teachings and the glimpse of peace went missing at the testing time. Don't be too hard on yourself. But the fact that you are aware of it means that witnessing will happen. That, oh yes, this has repeated itself, this thought pattern has repeated itself. Not, I have repeated this thought pattern. You see, I have succumbed to a old habit. Witnessing brings objectivity. It can be clearly seen that this is the functioning of the ego. The old habits, thought patterns, what the ego is identified with is also witnessed. Allow that witnessing to just witness without judging. The guilt comes in when there is a judgment, and when there is a should and should not. Old habits and thought patterns should not be arising. You see, that is how the ego operates. So I hope this lends sufficient clarity for everyone. The next question is, this next question is sent in by someone who has asked a lot of questions many times over through email, and this actually question, we will go through it now, and we have to understand it in perhaps a different light, because it could represent a big misunderstanding with the teaching. So it says here, thank you for your talk, which I enjoy mostly. Acceptance of what is, I agree with 100%, but the capital B, and the but is in a separate line. I grew up under apartheid, and only when Mr. Mandela and the people of South Africa did not accept racial domination that they were able to force change leading to democracy. So in cases acceptance is not practical or desirable. Again, in many cases acceptance is great, but in some, for example the British rule of India, Mahatma Gandhi forced independence. Acceptance was not appropriate for most democratic countries. I do hope you see my point of view. And do you allow for opposition to race or caste discrimination? You see, I would like to begin by saying, and all of you who have subscribed to these podcasts have delved deep into this spiritual journey, so you are aware of the basics of this teaching. See, Nisargadatta Maharaj used to say to people that when you come to me, please listen totally. Don't just hear what I am saying. Put aside all your concepts and the baggage you have acquired and listen totally. Now, Rameshji had another angle on this. He would say, I understand that there's lots of confusion in your mind, so you have questions and I'm here to answer them. He was a very patient man in that sense. Also, if one has gone through many teachings, many masters, many books, what happens is we acquire concepts from everywhere and we pit one against the other and try to understand it better. Of course, it is a genuine effort, no doubt, but it can create confusion. Now, for someone who has been enjoying all the talks, all the videos, let us get to the root of this issue. Acceptance of what is simply means accepting that what happened was meant to happen, otherwise it would not happen. It would not have happened. Thereafter, we are free to think and do precisely that which we should. This point is missed. When one mentions apartheid, these things happened. Thereafter, what action to take, how to react, one is free to do exactly what one thinks and feels one should do. Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for so long in prison. There was an acceptance that he was in prison. That doesn't mean nothing was done thereafter. You see? And let's not forget that if one is able to force change leading to democracy, that can only happen if in the first instance the democracy is taken away from you. Please understand how interrelated events are. So this is what is meant by when Maharaj says, rather than digging shallow wells all over the land, dig one deep well. Go deep into the teachings to understand them. Obviously, logical common sense says that how can one have caste discrimination as an example? But it still happened, right? After the happening, luminaries arose to take on the challenges, which was also a happening. Now, Mahatma Gandhi has been used in this example. Isn't he the one who said, if someone slaps you, show him the other cheek? And yet, this question says that, oh, he also rose up to challenge the British. See, this is how the mind works. This yes but, yes but, yes but. This also is not deliberate. It is the nature of the mind, and this too has to be witnessed. But this can only be destined if it is the destiny of the person asking the question to reach that understanding. If the British rule had not happened, Mahatma Gandhi would not have happened. You see? So, acceptance of what is does not mean sitting and letting people walk all over you. This is a very basic understanding. Acceptance of what is means, instead of denying the original happening and asking questions, why did God do this? Who does God think He is? What harm did this person do? What did this country do wrong? All that dialogue is erased. So the psychological suffering is wiped out, and then the action required is taken with a vacant mind. That is why you have great beings like Aurobindo who have said that when you are confronted with the situation, call in the peace and quiet and calm rather than trembling like a leaf in the breeze, and then give the appropriate response. You see? So, this question ends on, I hope you see my point of view, but I would rather turn it around and tell the questioner, I hope you see my point of view. And the seeing is the only doing necessary. Nothing is required beyond that. Nobody is saying to accept racial discrimination, caste discrimination. Who would want to accept such abnormalities in the human psyche? If all there is consciousness, if the same consciousness functions through all the instruments, differentiation cannot even arise. In fact, Maharaj would say that even male and female is a differentiation from the original consciousness. You see? Because he was talking to the I am. He was talking to consciousness, as he would say, not to the body in front of him. So, I do hope the exploration goes deeper, but the knowing is that it can only happen if it is destined to happen. Thank you.